Hey everyone. So we hosted Dinner Club in Newmarket in February, and we held our after party at the Stone Church. And when I walked in there for the first time, I could feel the history oozing through its walls. The bands that have played there, the memories that have been made, the espresso martinis that have been drank, the art that's been shared. I knew that one day I wanted to be a part of it. And that day is coming soon. On Thursday, May 7th, Seacoast Stories will hold the first ever live podcast at the Stone Church. Alongside me on stage will be beloved past guest Max Pruna, the owner of La Melita Coffee and Rye. Local musician Caitlin Piper will then bring her acoustic guitar to perform a couple songs. And in our headliner, Portsmouth's very own Stephanie Shaheen will talk to me about her congressional campaign, some of the top issues on the Seacoast, and a whole lot more. This show is proudly presented by our dear friends at Chinberg Properties, and it will be a special night in an intimate venue, and I would love to see you there. Note that seats are limited in this smaller venue, so if you want in, I do suggest you get your tickets as soon as possible. To do so, you can visit the events section of the show notes. Welcome to Seacoast Stories, a weekly podcast where we interview the people and businesses of New Hampshire and Maine. I'm Troy Farkas. I've produced some of the most popular podcasts in the world, and since moving to the Seacoast in 2023, I've fallen in love with the area and its inspiring people. And now I'm on a mission to bring the Seacoast closer together, one podcast at a time. Today is April 20th, and for some people, that date means absolutely nothing. But for enthusiasts of a particular green plant known as cannabis, 420 is a national holiday. To celebrate the occasion, we have a trailblazer of the marijuana industry joining me on today's episode. His name, Dana Brearley. He's the co-founder of East Coast Cannabis, the top dog in the Seacoast recreational cannabis scene. Not only is ECC the most recognizable cannabis brand around here, but they were also the first. And that's because Dana and his co-founder, James Folan, spent years lobbying the state of Maine to legalize recreational cannabis until they won. In their arguments, they cited the health benefits of cannabis and how this plant can change people's lives, not only their own, but also the dozens of patients they'd worked with prior to legalization in 2016 when Dana and James were running a company called Arcana, which legally treated patients for medical purposes. But when they started Arcana, they did so with their eyes on the future. When Colorado and Washington State made the landmark decisions to legalize recreational use in 2012, Dana and James knew it was only a matter of time until the movement made its way here. And while running Arcana, they got a first-hand look at the good, bad, and the ugly of the cannabis business, which prepared them with everything they needed to know prior to founding East Coast Cannabis in 2020, the first recreational cannabis business south of Portland. Today, East Coast Cannabis is a machine. They have 3 locations now, their flagship in Elliott, and 2 more stores in Waterville and Lebanon, Maine. But, as you'll soon learn, the road to get to this point was long, unforgiving, and expensive. On today's episode, Dana's career pivots from payroll to plants, the many roadblocks he and James faced along the way, the fight to legalize recreational cannabis in Maine, pushback that ECC received in its early days, why marijuana still isn't legal in New Hampshire, and whether it will be anytime soon. Plus, why he didn't take a paycheck for the first 6 years in the industry, ECC's partnership with the famous boxer Mike Tyson, and why Meta keeps taking down ECC's social media accounts. All of that and more to come, but first, a little more about Dana. He's a native of Deerfield, New Hampshire. He attended Plymouth State, played basketball there, and studied sales. After that, he started his career in Hampton at ADP, a reputable payroll company. He's also played music basically his whole life, and his band, Jamsterdam, performs regularly at places like Mojo's, Bernie's Beach Bar, and even on the Thomas Layton, which I can't wait to check him out there soon. But to begin, we head back to 2011, when Dana has just moved to the Seacoast and is in awe of its majesty. When you first moved to the Seacoast, what were your earliest impressions?
My mind was blown. I mean, I'd grown up in a small town. I went to Concord High, which for the capital of New Hampshire, Concord really doesn't have a ton going on. It's not a super exciting city. Plymouth, as you can imagine, is also super small, very outdoors geared. So when I moved out here, I was exposed to a world that I'd really never experienced. There's a lot of affluence. There's a lot of activities. The nightlife, there's a million restaurants in this town, as you're aware. It was mind blowing and a ton of fun.
And so what year was this when you moved out here?
I moved out here in 2011.
In 2011. All right. Yeah. So take me back to that time. What's the scene like? What are your go-to hangouts? You talk about the nightlife. I love learning about what the kids used to get up to here.
Yeah. In my young 20s, we used to go to the Page a lot.
That's where La Coretta is?
That's where La Coretta is.
Right. Yeah, okay. I've heard about this. What kind of place was it? Was it more upscale? Was it more dive bar-y?
It was marketed as a sports bar. So in the upstairs of it, where La Coretta is now, it was set up very similar, kind of fragmented. They did have a stage in the back. So they had some music. It was a little more spread out. You could go there and watch games. And then downstairs was kind of more of the club, I guess you could say. It was low ceilings, dark. They'd have a DJ out in the back. And, it was similar to, I think, kind of what you think of as the upstairs Gaslight nowadays.
Okay. So the Page, were you a D Street guy?
Yeah, that came later, surprisingly. Yeah.
Really?
I think at that age,
I would think that would be your spot.
I was a little more shy in singing when I was younger.
Really?
So I was a long time as a guitar player, and then it took me a long time to actually want to start singing. But now I love going to D Street singing karaoke. We'd go to the Red Door.
Of course.
They had
legendary.
The famous espresso martinis. Had my first one there.
Wait, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm on such a huge espresso martini kick right now. I recently filmed a video where I went around town. I tried at 5 different places. I crowned the press rooms as the best espresso martini.
Okay.
Sorry, Wilder. Sorry, Cup of Joe. You're all amazing, but slight edge to the press room. But I wish I had the opportunity to try them at the Red Door, because I've heard many people speak very glowingly of the Red Door and of their espresso martinis in particular.
I think it was a lot of people's first espresso martini. It was certainly mine, but you'd go up to this little bar, wasn't much larger than this table, and you'd just see 20 of these things coming out.
Oh my God, I love it. I'm doing sober April right now, so this certainly isn't making this any easier. So we have to get off this topic. Let's get to the cannabis business. So you had told me previously that you first tried it out, as many of us do, 13, 14 years old, not having the highest quality of stuff. Who knows where you're getting it from? You're doing it with your friends in weird locations. You didn't love it. You used it a bit more in college. In your adult life, as we said, you come to the Seacoast for your job at ADP. From that point on, what does your relationship to cannabis look like?
I've never been a strong sleeper, specifically getting to sleep. I stay asleep fairly well. And I'd noticed if I'd use cannabis at night, it would do a great job at getting me to sleep. So then I started to say, all right, this is something here, and I'd start toying around with different genetics. I was lucky to be connected to a medical farmer out of state, I was able to try and sample other things that were tough to get at the time. And at that point, it wasn't completely medical. We'd use it recreationally. Again, as an artist and a musician, I think cannabis has a whole other side to it in the creative realm, which I loved. So I would say I wasn't an all day user, but I was definitely a night smoker.
Now, on the sleep side of things, alcohol can also get you to sleep very easily, but also leads to not the highest of quality sleep. I know if I drink within 3 hours of sleeping, I can sleep for 7-8 hours, but I still do not feel rested at all the next morning. Same deal with cannabis or different?
It's actually different. And that knowledge didn't come to me even well into my cannabis experience as far as my career is concerned. I've got a partner in one of the beverage ventures I'm doing, we were talking about earlier, and he wears one of those Whoop devices, and he's always sending me results, on how things are doing.
The sleep score guy.
Exactly. And it's actually yielded that cannabis does very well for your sleep scores.
Love to hear that. All right. So you're using it for both medicinal and recreational. Mm-hmm. You eventually do leave ADP and you go start to work at a startup, right?
Yep.
What was this?
I was working with a buddy of mine, Dave Haley. He's a local sports guy. He goes in the Hampshire sports page.
Sports guy.
Exactly. He covers high school sports locally, and he had connected me to a company that was doing, I don't know if you guys did this where you're from, but this is very popular in New Hampshire. You'd get these discount cards and kids would go and sell them for $20.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I saw those.
So we were pretty much the company that would help facilitate all that.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, it wasn't exactly a passion of mine. So I stayed with that for about a year and a half. I want to say that company got acquired by a larger company that had been doing it, or merger. And that's when I had started to dip my toe into maybe cultivating a little bit of cannabis and trying that in Maine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what year is this?
This is 2015.
This is 2015. Okay, so to backtrack, marijuana recreationally legalized in Colorado and Washington in 2012. So this is really when kind of there's some movement toward making recreational legal, although medicinal had been legal for much longer time. When did the idea of first working in this industry come to you?
So I had a friend, or I still have a friend, he's a great guy, who had done this a few years ahead of me in California. So he had brought it up. I had went and visited his farm in California, worked on it a little bit, learned a little bit about the plant, at least from the backside of it. And then had been watching the regulations in New England and saw that in tandem, Maine and Massachusetts were the cool states. And when I say cool, at that time, they had medical platforms. Maine's was a lot more favorable. Barriers to entry were fairly non-existent. So by mid 2015, I was fairly sold that me and my best friend were going to go buy some semblance of a property or greenhouse and start to try to cultivate cannabis as a medical provider.
Why were you sold?
I had learned enough about it and was bought in enough with the plant, the substance, the experience, the medical values that I knew there was something there to be had. And I truly believed I was in early enough where we had a shot at it. To be fully candid, at the onset, it was purely economic. I was thinking, hey, I'm early enough at this where I can have it figured out by the time recreation comes. The unique thing in cannabis is because it's federally illegal at the state level, you can look at wheels that have been rolled like Colorado for 5 years before we had 2016. It got legalized in Maine recreationally. We didn't have a platform until 2020. Well, they'd been doing it for 8 years by then. So I saw the fruits of what could happen. And what happened along the way is you start to see all the medical benefits, and then you start to back into, wow, this is really a miraculous plant and what it can do for people.
So you and your buddy James,
Yep.
right, start up what was originally before East Coast Cannabis, Arcana.
Yep.
What was Arcana?
So Arcana, we bought, that was a house with a 3,000 square foot barn on the back of the property. And Arcana was...
Where was this?
This was in Elliott, Maine.
Okay.
Yep. Arcana was pretty much the proving grounds of can we do this or can we not? So we started in the house, chose one of the bedrooms, put a couple lights in it, had a buddy drop off some plants and failed our way through all sorts of grow techniques. We finally figured it out, scaled into the basement. And then at that point, we scaled at the barn, eventually built that out into 2 stories, and at some point exceeded that. But
wow. What were some of the biggest failures that you had growing up this barn?
Oh man, I don't know if you have time. The nice thing about this business and what we refer to as bootstrapping, which happens in any industry, is you learn so much through failure. And I think anything that could have gone wrong in cannabis, we did it, right? We got pests. Right. You got to think you're creating Jamaica indoors in the state of Maine. Everything wants to get inside. So whether they're bugs, there's molds, there's mildews. We bought the wrong equipment. We didn't put the right mechanicals in place. At a small scale, we failed at absolutely everything when it came to cultivation.
Did you ever get down at this point?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
What am I doing here?
Yeah, exactly. Neither of us really had any money at all.
Yeah.
The little money we did have was completely submerged in this business at this point. So tensions were high, not necessarily between each other, but we both felt the pressure of we need to figure this out or we're just going to be back to selling payroll. And I think some that were watching from the outside and maybe didn't know me well were again with the stigma concern that like maybe this was like a consumer or addiction or some sort of drug problem, that I was backing into the business. So it was a pretty large spectrum of responses.
And how would you respond to the criticism?
I mean, at the time I was very confident. I'm like, this is going to be something. I've gone across the country where this is something and I've seen it in real life. I've held it. It's tangible. I've watched it happen. This is coming. Believe in me. I can get this done. I was very headstrong, maybe a little too much, but fortunately it worked out. But.
Yeah. So on the medicinal side of things, you said that you were seeing people's lives being changed with the help of cannabis. What were some specific cases or examples that you saw where it was really helping people?
Yeah. The most impactful patient we ever had was one of James's patients, and he was a C-level executive. He'd gotten a really bad car accident that had caused some really bad physical implications. Stuttering, tremors. He couldn't really speak well. He was pretty uncontrolled with his body. And he was he's one of the exceptional cases, but when he would use cannabis, it would almost regulate everything. And I know James still has it to this day. I've got to get it to you, but he still has a voicemail from him where the guy says, he called, he's tearing up. He's like, this is the first time I've been able to talk clearly in 3 years. So there's cases like that. And then there's cases even as small as people with arthritis. and using a topical that doesn't even have any intoxicating effects, and it just makes their hands feel better or joints. Everything from sleep aid, pain mitigation across the entire body in different facets. So that would be the most impactful case. I'd say the largest group of medical users would be for pain. Back pain specifically seemed to be the one that was erupting at the time we got into medical. And I think that's a mixture, right? A lot of people, myself included, right? I use it, like I mentioned, medically, but I don't have a medical card. So you find a user group of people that are self-diagnosed, and maybe they got it from a doctor for this reason, but they're using it for a plethora of reasons. You know, we had a lot of cancer patients. Those were a lot of really sad cases, but it does help. Yeah.
So when you say that you had patients, how did you get these patients? How did they come to you?
It was tough. You had to find them. We'd work with the doctors to get referral sources. And back then, the program was so adolescent. So I was what was called a caregiver. And as a caregiver, I can take care of a maximum of 6 patients. It's really 5, and then myself included. So that pretty much means is, you know, if you're one of my patients, I can grow X amount of plants for you. This is your medication. I can process that how you need it. If you need it in a topical, we can make it that way for you. If you want it as flower, we can leave it as flower. But ultimately, those 6 plants are yours, and I would have 5 of you. So finding them was difficult. Once you kept them, I think it was a really good practice for a cannabis operator, because you want to keep this patient. There was a lot of people doing what I did. The patients are valuable to you, so you need to do right by them.
Why could you only have 6?
I think what Maine did, or actually I know what Maine did, is they wanted to adopt it, right? And what happens in a lot of states that go medically legal is it's not always some politician that says, I'm going to do this. You know, you have movement from people, whether it's petitioning, whether you have a group of patients that come and speak at the state office and say this needs to happen, or they go up on the stand and say this fixed X, Y, and Z. Generally, you get a movement from the populace that pushes legislator. So then what legislature does is they turn around and say, all right, we have to do this because it got pushed through. We're going to do our best to keep it small. The way you keep it small is say, you can only have X amount of patients. Each patient can only have so many plants. That way, in my flower room, I can only have 30 plants. If that makes sense.
Right. Well, I'm sure that definitely limited the capabilities of your business.
Very much.
Yeah. And ultimately, you would want people to hopefully get off cannabis as soon as possible, because it means that they're getting better and don't need it anymore as well.
Correct. Yeah. You want to, I mean, the goal is to try to fix people.
Yeah.
So we knew that was going to be a means to the ends. That's a very unique program to Maine.
Right.
We were also learning about things like lobbying. You know, I hired my first attorney then, you know, and met with her, and she said, listen, these are things you need to be doing. You need to go, you're a constituent. You need to go talk to the people that represent you and tell them what can make your businesses better, what can make you help more people. So it was only like that for, I want to say 2 to 3 years, which fine. You know, I think in most industries that would scare you off, which was a benefit to us. All the big players, that was a barrier. For me, it enabled me to fail my way through 3 years and figure it out by the time there was more at stake.
Right. So you guys would work with doctors, and you would tell the doctors in the hospitals, hey, we have medicinal cannabis here, and they could actually prescribe it to their patients and would get it from you guys?
So at the time, these doctors wouldn't sit in traditional hospital institutions. You know, these were specific small family doctor offices that were cannabis friendly. And those were where a patient could go to get a medical card. So now you can get a medical card very easy. Back then, I'd have to go sit down with a doctor, talk to him about what I was doing, what I needed. And he would either decide that I need, or he or she would even decide I need it or I don't. And generally, the patients were well equipped when they got in there. They would get the card. And all we did with the doctors was say, use this as a resource. You know, I've got an opening for a patient. If you've got someone that seems to fit, I'd appreciate a referral. So we weren't doctors. You know, we weren't really, it was that gray area of we can help you, but the doctor needs to tell you what you need. We're not medical advisors.
Right. So on that note, what certifications, what requirements did you need to have to be able to do this?
The wild thing about this is absolutely none. To become a caregiver, it was $1,200 and a background check at the state of Maine.
Really?
Boom, you're a caregiver. Yep.
How do you feel about that?
I mean, at the time, it was great because that's probably all the money I had. Yeah. If that program still existed that way today, I think there'd be a lot of question marks in it. But yeah, I think at the time it worked really well for me. You know, it enabled us to play.
Right.
And we were fortunately ethical, right? I think that's the only caveat to a system like that is you're forced to rely on the ethics of the operator.
You mentioned some of the cases where this was really life-changing. When you heard voicemails like that, what did it mean to you to know that you were providing something that was helping people?
It was a feeling I'd never had before. My only other job before that was selling payroll, which maybe you're going to help a business owner, but it's not that same type of reward. I'd worked in construction, and you turn around, and you build a deck. It's inspiring. You did this, I built it, but there's no better feeling than changing someone's life. We got off to it, it was something that was contagious. We wanted to help more. It was inspiration to grow the business. I think those are some of the most pivotal key factors of the journey of what is now East Coast Cannabis.
Yeah. And I'm sure when times got hard, especially in those early days when there's a lot going against you, really kept you going.
It did, because there's a part of it where, there was a lot of times we thought about turning and running. This isn't working. We're not getting it down. We're just losing money. But then you think we're doing that. But if we turn and walk away, what's this person's next source of care? But we were just so passionate. We believed in it. We were starting to see the success. We were starting to change people's lives. We were seeing the legislation and the rules at the state level start to work in our favor to be able to expand and grow this business and get to the next leg. So the culmination of all that was what drove us. Yeah.
So you were playing an active role in going to the state house and trying to get this legalized.
Yep.
Wow. So what did that look like for you?
It was pretty much you're going up there and telling your story. Some of the same things I'm telling you now. This is what it means to patients. These are the changes it's taking, because you got to remember in politics, more often than not, the people that are making the rules don't necessarily know. Right. And they're relying on either lobbyists or constituents or whoever else can get to them to have a voice. So we wanted to make sure our voice was heard, that this isn't bad. It's not what you hear. It's not, the Reefer Madness videos. Like, this is real. It's good. It's not bad. It's unlike alcohol. It's not addictive. There's not all the bad problems you see. There's so much good data from it. And again, back to the point I made earlier, there's data that's now almost a decade old in mature states out west, and they don't have any of the problems that we're being told are going to come. So for us, we can go up and say, here's our story. Here's what's happening in a legitimate state already. How can you say no to this?
So what were some of the benefits that you were stating, as part of your lobbying work?
We used a lot of statistics out of Colorado. And listen, you gotta know your receiver, right? What do they want to hear? Tax revenue, right? And I think at the time, Colorado was pacing to do like $1 billion in tax revenue in the first couple of years. That was really exciting, especially in a state like Maine. Southern Maine's very affluent, but overall, the state needs money, and it's in a pretty tough spot there. So the number one thing we were lobbying for is you can make a lot of money here. If you make it recreational, let's not tax the patients, but if you make it recreational, you could put a tax right at that retail register, and that all funnels right back to the state fund.
Coming up, how Dana learns of Maine's decision to legalize recreational marijuana, why it takes 4 years to open the doors of East Coast Cannabis, and an inside look at what it's really like to run a cannabis business. All of that soon to come. But first, I want to tell you about something that I did last week. So I paid a visit to my friend Amber at Studioh, which is a salon right next to Southport Kitchen in Rye. She sat me down, plucked out 4 of my hairs, she put them underneath a scanner, gathered some quick data, and then she sent that data off to a team of researchers in Belgium who promised to return an analysis of my hair health back to us in 5 minutes. Wild. While we waited, Amber took a fancy camera to my scalp, which gave us a microscopic view of it. It was kind of gross, but also really eye-opening. Amber was a little worried about some things, especially given my diabetes, but overall, we gave my scalp health a B-. She then provided some very easy tips for how to improve my scalp health, like using a scalp brush before I go to bed, and also some foods that would help me get closer to an A+. And after Belgium gave the results back, Amber sent me on my way with some incredible insights and advice for improving my hair health. This entire consultation was a fascinating experience, and Amber was so easy to work with. If you would like to get one of these consultations to see where your hair health stands, Amber is offering my listeners a special deal. From now through the end of April, you can visit Studioh to get $100 off a hair consultation. It's normally $250. You'll get it for $150. Just book your appointment through the link in the show notes and say that Seacoast Story sent you. Studioh will then follow up to schedule your discounted consultation. Thank you, Studioh, for improving my scalp health and for supporting this show. Now back to my conversation with Dana Brearley. So after starting Arcana with the vision of selling recreationally one day, after all the throat punches you took, after all the doubts, after I'm sure all the sleepless nights, what do you remember feeling in that moment when you learned of the news that Maine had legalized recreational cannabis in 2016.
I remember we were standing down at the middle school holding signs, trying to get people to sign petition, right? Because that's what all started. You had to do that. They did that across the state. It happened enough where recreational got pushed through. I will never forget that phone call from our attorney that said, "It's passed. It's go time." Yeah. It was exciting.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we celebrated that night. Yeah.
Yeah. How'd you celebrate?
Maybe had a little cannabis, a couple drinks.
Yeah. All right. So you get the phone call. It's a go time. You celebrate. What are the next steps?
Start looking for places to do it. Because when recreational comes, I'm not going to be able to open a store in my bedroom, right? So we started sitting in on town meetings, specifically in the town of Elliott, where we were. We started to listen to them talk about where their proposed zoning was going to be, if they were going to allow it, if they weren't. At the time, the state had opened up and said, okay, we're going to do recreational, but to keep their municipalities happy, they said, we're going to give the townships the opportunity to opt in or opt out. So we also started now to lobby to Elliott to say, you should opt in. You need to play in this business. This would be great for you. There's a lot of municipal tax that could come out of this. We went back to the dump and the schools and all the voting booths and had petitions and did what we could to raise awareness, and fortunately got that pushed through in Elliott as well.
Without much pushback?
There was some pushback. I mean, the most pushback is you would get someone that just didn't understand, and they'd be pretty brutal to you in person, and in their defense, there hasn't been a lot of education in this country on the benefits of cannabis, so if all you hear is bad, I understand that that's what they're going to portray to us. And we would just do our best to take it on the chin and try to educate them as best as we could. Yeah. Fortunately, that was the minority of people. Again, people in the townships, they want the money too. Their taxes go down if there's another vehicle to bring taxes in. Cannabis is a vehicle for that. So I think that was always the saving grace, was go to their wallet. And Elliott decided to opt in. So fortunately, I think Elliott at the time was the only township south of Portland that decided to opt in.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so then that allows you to really be first to market.
Yes, it gave us a really good runway. I beat the streets. I walked up and down 236 and knocked on every door. I eventually found a realtor that knew Peter Paul, who owns Northern Pool and Spa, which is the building right across from my store in Elliott. He had a building, or still has a building out back that we occupy, that he was just happened to be moving all his stuff out of because he'd built a new warehouse in Dover. And he's like, "Sure, kid, I'll rent it to you." It fit the zoning. We rented it, and we got a stake in the ground. Yeah.
And so 236, this is where today the Green Mile is. Yep. You guys were the first ones there.
We were the first ones, first recreational one.
Wow.
Yep.
All right. So it took a number of years, 2016 to 2020. Why did it take so long?
In 2020, we got our license. In 2020, we were still finishing out under East Coast Cannabis, but in medical. At that point, we knew we needed to launch a brand. We could no longer just be this weed company, right? We needed to have something that was exciting for customers, right? The reason any industry needs brands. And then the store opened in June of 2021. So we started building, we got township approval, and took about 6 months.
Right. But why so long in between the legalization?
So here's the thing, right? In any state, it usually takes about 4 years.
Okay.
And the reason being is from, okay, we're going to do this, to having all of the regulations written. Who's going to be the governing body? How and why and where are we going to tax this? Where are we going to allow it? What's going to be the zoning? How much power are we going to give to the townships to decide this? What are going to be the state rules that oversee all of this? Who are we going to elect? How are we going to elect them? Is this going to be someone that we can just bring in and say, you're going to run cannabis, or are we going to, have a contractor from out of state? What's the tracking system that's going to work? Who's going to test it? Are there enough labs? Now we need to make sure labs can get built. So there's just so many nuances to the industry that need to be the foundation before you can actually run, that it took 4 years to get all that up and going.
Wow.
And then there's also licensing at the town level. So then you get the state license, and then you got to go to the municipality and get their license and their usage approvals for the land. I mean, it is a mountain of work.
How annoying was it to deal with all of that?
So annoying. Yeah. So annoying. In the beginning, you're so excited and green, you're just willing to run through whatever wall it takes.
Yeah.
But eventually you have to say the same thing over and over and over and over again to enough people where you're like, this shouldn't be this hard.
Yeah.
I'm not making dynamite.
Right.
I'm trying to make medicine for people. But yeah, it was a pain. It was a barrier to entry, so I think from a competitive stance, it makes it hard for a lot of competition to open and prevail. But yeah, it was really frustrating.
You told me in a previous conversation that you did not take a paycheck from the cannabis business for the first 6 years.
Correct.
That's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Most entrepreneurs would tell me I'm nuts.
Yeah.
And I think even if I was going to look into another venture now, it's like I would never consider something that couldn't return at least in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
But again, I was young. I was willing to work on the side and do what it took to make enough money to be able to at least survive so the business could stay healthy.
Yeah. I mean, I love founder stories. My favorite podcast is from NPR. It's called How I Built This. It talks to a lot of founders, and you have so many people like you who did not take a paycheck for 4, 5, 6 years, or took home very little, paid themselves, $15,000 a year just because they were so bullish that this is going to be a big thing one day.
Right.
And it's just always amazing to me because I couldn't imagine not taking a paycheck from the thing that I'm spending the most amount of my time on.
Yeah. Yeah. You really have to have a big dream. It certainly was.
Or maybe you were just smoking a lot at the time and you were delusional.
I was blinded by the product. Yeah.
All right. So you guys officially opened the doors, first to market, 2021. How was the business doing in the early days?
It exploded. Yeah. I mean, it was the only option. I think it's like we were a strong company. We've always put like our first focal point has just been on customer service. I think in any retail facet, if someone's walked in, they've made the cognitive decision to buy from you. So we shouldn't be selling them. We should be consulting them. And I think specifically in this industry, you see a lot of pushy operators. Do this, try this. No, you want a half ounce, not a quarter, whatever the upsell is, as opposed to just try to guide them and go back to that patient mentality of, why are you here? What do you need? What can we help you with? So I think that part alone, product aside, was a really good differentiator for us. Obviously, we had first mover advantage because we were the only one around. So it gave us a really good runway to build up customer loyalty, to figure out truly what products meant what to people, what were the most popular movers, what SKUs should be on the shelves, where, when, and why. So again, it kind of gave us a little bit of runway to figure it out and make some mistakes, to learn what the key winners were. And I think we did a good job with the brand. Kyle Moores, who's a local marketing guy, we had engaged him to do the design for East Coast. And if you look at it now, you can see the criteria we gave him. I said, listen, this is a tourist area. We want to engage people that are living the tourist adventure, right? So think of like an REI or a North Face. That's kind of the experience I want, where they can stop, whether they're going to the beach or they're going to go skiing or they're going to go hike a mountain or whatever they're going to do in the state of Maine. And I think he did a really nice job of building the brand around that persona. And I think that helps a ton too.
Yeah. Did you get the sense that there was a real pent up demand for recreational cannabis?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd been a user forever, right? So that means I was purchasing in the black market. The black market is currently and was even more strong then. I mean, everyone uses cannabis. And I remember like later in college when I was starting to use it again, and even after, you'd be out and about and maybe someone would smell it on you, or you'd be at a party and have a joint. There was no better camaraderie between you and a stranger when you realized that both of you were users. And that's similar to when you turn 21 and the fun of alcohol goes away. That's one of the things that I do kind of miss is you had such an instant bond of, oh, you're cool too, but it's everywhere,
Yeah.
It's like all your friends, everyone in the music. So it's like, the market's there. You don't know where they're getting it, how, when, and why, but they're getting it. So you just now want to be the provider. Yeah.
That's so funny. I know exactly the bond you're talking about, not with cannabis, but for me, I'm a UFC fan, and UFC it's a very popular global brand, but you have to be a certain kind of someone to like watching people punch each other in the face. And so whenever I find out in the wild that someone's a UFC fan or someone's wearing some type of UFC merch, I'll know that they're like, oh my God, I can talk to you for 30 minutes about this.
Right.
And now we're bonded for life.
Yeah.
Because like most people still think that you're like an insane person if you like the UFC.
I get it.
It's this weird alter ego I have where I'm like, oh, podcasts and yoga, but I also love watching just like bloody hand-to-hand combat.
That's great. It's your curveball. I like it.
Yeah. And you guys have a partnership with Mike Tyson as well, which is pretty cool.
We do.
And he appears there every now and then the store, right?
Yes, he does.
That's wild.
Yeah.
What was it like meeting him?
He's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's because, like any celebrity, it's like you hear everything in the world, and he just ended up talk about someone that's really got a lot out of the plant.
Yeah.
He's someone that has a really holistic look at medicine. He's really about helping people. He has a huge passion for cannabis. So it was fun to meet him. He's got a hell of a handshake.
Yeah. I believe it. Hell of a right hook as well.
Yeah. Iron Mike. Yeah.
Yeah.
He put my wife in a headlock. I was just like, I don't know. You're just going to have to deal with that. I don't know what you want me to do.
Amazing. All right. Thank you for allowing me to nerd out there. All right. So a little back to the earlier days when it came to hiring, how did you think about hiring staff members or your bud tenders?
Yeah. So we took on some really early key individuals, that had come from, so back in the caregiver days, like we were talking about before, what the state also did is 1 per county, they would allow a dispensary. And what a dispensary was, is they could work outside of the caregiver model. They could have more what you see today. You could service whoever walked in as long as they had a medical card. So the employees at those places were a lot more seasoned. Some of them, those entities didn't do very well. So we were able to cherry pick some really key, strong individuals, and now a lot of them are still directors with us today at our company. But so that kind of gave us a bit of a runway, someone that had done it before. After that, we started to look like places like Dunkin's and line cooks. And the reason for that is like in manufacturing out back, people that work in restaurants, I didn't realize this, and this isn't a shot at restaurants, but a lot of them get abused. They get work so hard. It's hot conditions. The hours are brutal. So for us to come to them and be like, we still need the assembly line approach, but we're going to let you work from 9 to 4 or whatever the hours are. It's not going to be in a hot kitchen. We need gummies made during the day. It's not going to be customer facing. There's no one going to be barking down your throat, similar to someone from Dunkin's. People at Dunkin's, they get like, they take a hard rap. You know what I mean? It's like, you messed up my coffee. You messed up my sandwich. They had really thick skin. For them to come in and now sell cannabis to a cannabis consumer that's just always really happy and just wants some guidance, that for them is a change of world. And what we didn't foresee is the bud tenders specifically, they get tipped extremely well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, very, very well.
I didn't realize that was a part of the culture of it.
I honestly didn't either getting into it. I didn't have any retail experience and specifically any cannabis retail experience, but we found in the first year, the tips were excessive. And that's what we wanted, right? And I always laugh about this. I'd stop and look at my staff and be like, you guys need to be like Cheers. And no one knew what Cheers was. So I was dating myself. I'd go home and watch Ted Danson and Cheers. But it's like your local bar. A lot of people in culture, you end up having your bar and your spot or your restaurant. And a lot of that is because of the relationship with the server. That's what we were driving towards. I don't want this to be a single transactional retail experience. I want this to be a relationship. So we were looking for individuals that were able to harbor that. So because of that, we also took a lot of people from food and beverage. Right. They didn't want to be behind a bar until 10 o'clock at night. You can sell cannabis during the day and be a bud tender or connoisseur. I get that same experience, same interaction.
Yeah. And connoisseur. I never heard that term. Yeah. It took me a minute.
Yeah. Funny. So I think that was at least the staffing strategy.
Yeah.
But
and I've never understood how this is legal, but restaurant workers don't make minimum wage and they are reliant on tips. Is it like that in bud tending as well?
No, we pay above minimum wage.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they make tips.
Okay. Listen, I'm always a proponent of performance-based compensation because everyone wins.
Yeah.
And I think you also highlight good employees that way. It's if you're working for the base salary, are you really inspired? If you're working hard to really make this customer happy and get them what they need and maybe they'll tip you more, that's a very different motivation. Similar to Outback, it's like Outback, I say back of houses, and that's like the manufacturing cultivation side. If you can make 3,000 gummies and suppose a 2,000 and there's a incentivized kicker for it, you've got a reason, and now coming from sales, that's what I knew was you're driven, you're motivated. And also from an employer stance, it's less risk. Because if I'm paying them that money, that means they did it.
Yeah.
Right. So it made sense for both parties. Yeah.
Now, the job interview for a place at a new cannabis company where it's newly legal, I imagine you would want people who have experience using cannabis.
Yep.
But would also, upon admitting that, would be incriminating themselves that they were doing it illegally before.
Yes. The good news is because of the medical market, they could say they used it without incriminating themselves. Okay. And I think most people read between the lines that if we're interviewing for a cannabis company and you even said you've used it illegally, we're probably not going to use that against you. Yeah. So, but it was very interesting because there's a sex appeal of cannabis, right? So we'd get a massive applicant pool. When people are struggling to get interviews, we'd have hundreds. The problem is 3/4 of them would come in and they'd be like, wait, so I can't just sit around and get high all day? It's like, no, this is a job. This is a real job. You can't be intoxicated.
Yeah. And it's actually a very important job where you have to be very responsible.
Exactly. And it's also highly regulated.
Yeah.
So because of that would wipe out a lot of people in the pool. But you get a lot of people that were like me when I was younger. They want something different. So they're ready to make a change. Maybe they're not starting the business, but they're excited to work in a brand new industry. They can be part of the pioneers, and I think there was a lot of young inspiration, especially for our employee pool between 22 and 30, where they just wanted to be in something innovative and new.
On the regulation side, obviously this is very regulated. What were the biggest pain points, especially early on in the East Coast cannabis days, that's made it, that were just a big pain in the butt?
I think probably the biggest one is and this ties into the regulation, is it's somewhat capitally intensive, and what I mean by that is because there's so much tracking and there's so much data and there's so much that has to go back to the state, it just does put a little bit on the operator to get that done. When we were learning how to do it, is expensive. Now that you know how to do it, you can call a consultant. It's really not. It's super easy. But again, when we were bootstrapping this back in 2019 and getting it built, that was kind of some of the difficulty. And it's expensive to begin with. This business is not cheap to get into. These grows are very expensive to build. You have to have a huge building. You have lights, you got mechanicals, they are not cheap to build. And then once you do build it, you have 9 months until you get your first crop. So you're carrying costs for a long time.
Oh, wow.
So I think like most of it too was even before you get there is figuring out what you can and can't do. How can I do this? How does it has to be separated? What are the extraction, for example? When you extract, you do it a couple different ways. You either use a lot of pressure, whether it's physical pressure in a press or CO2, or you use solvents, hydrocarbons like butane, propane, and pentane. All those in themselves come with a complete different regulatory scheme of rules that are outside of cannabis and that just live in common practices with those things. That was a ton. We had to pay engineering firms a ton of money to get that set up right. So it kind of depends on the division of the business, but the regulatory part is a lot. Licensing, a lot of money, and everyone's greedy, we shot ourselves in the foot. We lobbied to the state, said, you're going to make a lot of money on this. And they turned around and said, okay, you can do it. State license is 50 grand, so and then you go to the town. They're like, yeah, you can have a store. Store's going to be 10,000. Grow's going to be 20 and lab's going to be 10,
Sheesh.
So you get milked a lot.
Yeah.
So I'd say probably the money was the worst part of it. Yeah.
Are representatives from the state of Maine constantly coming in, checking up on you guys just to make sure you guys are abiding by the letter of the law?
Yeah, about once a year, you have them come through. It was terrifying when we were medical. They never came ever. They could, but from 2015 to 2020, I never saw one ever. When we were rec, they started to come once a year. And I think that's just because we're servicing so many people. It's like millions of people have come through my stores at this point. Wow. So they need to make sure what you're doing is
millions.
Correct. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So the thing is they come down and they just want to make sure that, you're doing it right. Their job is to make sure the stores are secure, and you don't have a cash thing out on the floor. You're not succumbing to practices that are going to make you a target.
What would some of those practices be?
Well, let's say you're just keeping your safe underneath the counter. That's technically not allowed in the adult use. Do I appreciate those rules? No. I think as an operator, you should be smart enough to be able to navigate them and not have someone check on you. But at the end of the day, they've legalized something that even though it got through, there was a lot of people that opposed it. So they want to make sure that similar to the pioneer states, there's not bad data. Bad data comes with bad experiences or problems or robberies or anything along those lines. But there is a governing body and they are present.
Speaking of opposition, if there's one thing I've learned from this podcast growing, there's a lot of angry people on the Seacoast, mainly online, who just love to voice their concerns about things. Were you guys getting early pushback from people on the Seacoast when you guys started doing business recreationally?
Yes, we did. I want to say it was right when we opened in June of 2021, that first store. There was an article in Seacoast Online. They'd come up and they interviewed James and I. And there really wasn't much in it as, for negative stuff, but people definitely pick it apart. To this day, we get people that call the store and tell us that we're, whatever, the worst people in the world or drug dealers or we're causing schizophrenia,
Wow.
Like anything you've unfortunately, at least in my experience, the 1% make 99% of the noise, and unfortunately we get a target for that. So
yeah,
I think, Tyson specifically, he's had some things in his past that are controversial. Yeah. He's got some political stances. And I think that in itself, we've got some kickback for. Nothing crazy, but every now and again, you get someone that's really upset about it. And hey, listen, this is a free country, where people are allowed to believe and not believe and disagree with that they want. And that's what we appreciate about the US. So it's like, I'm not upset with those individuals for holding opinions, but they do exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys, again, opened 2021. The Green Mile, there's now a bunch of stores.
Correct.
Up and down 236. When you started seeing these other stores pop up, what was coming to mind for you?
Originally, oh shit.
Yeah.
But it sounded a lot scarier than it ended up being. I think there's two schools of thought. I think they've definitely oversaturated. There's no scenario where all of them are going to survive. But
how many are there? Do you know?
I want to say there's almost 7 rec players now between Kittery and Elliott.
That's wild.
And then there's another like 4 or 5 medical, quite a few. So there's the part of initially, right, when you create an epicenter, and I think Portsmouth experiences this with restaurants, right? How many times you walk into someone that's not from around here and they came here to eat? I see it in the Fort side of Kittery where I live all the time. So I think 2 to 3, now all of a sudden, like you're creating some excitement. This is becoming an epicenter for premium cannabis. That's not bad. That's actually good. We can grow together. The same reason you see McDonald's and Burger King pop up across the street from each other, right? I think having 10 or 11 is insane, Yeah.
It'd be like, on Islington right now, like I love doing a little West End pub crawl. I can hit Liars and I can hit LQ and then Tree Line and then I'm good. I don't really need any more than that. I don't need 7 breweries along Islington Street.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I think it's going to be very similar to the trend you saw in the brewery world, right? Breweries popped up. They were everywhere.
Yeah.
Now they're starting to compress a little bit and, the cream's rising to the top and who survives and who doesn't. That is already happening in cannabis and will very much happen in our region.
Yeah.
Being first helped us. We have a lot of customer loyalty, so our numbers haven't really slipped too much, which has been nice. We still see a lot of traffic. We did lose some people, but I think we're arrogant and ignorant if we think that we can satisfy every type of customer. Not every restaurant's the right fit for every person, and that's okay. You know what I mean? So listen, I want everyone to shop with me as an entrepreneur, but I understand that we're not going to be the shoe that fits every foot.
Right.
But does that mean there needs to be 12 other shoe stores? It's not sustainable. So
I'm sure word of mouth has been, as it is for a lot of Seacoast businesses, has been very key for your marketing style, especially because the social media game for East Coast Cannabis has had quite the up and down nature. Can you take me into what that has been like and why you are now on East Coast Cannabis account number 5?
Yes. So Meta follows federal rules, and I think they also take that torch and run with it a little further. They don't allow any advertisement of cannabis. Yeah, that's why, like, when you look at our posts, you'll see not for sale, 21 plus. We do what we can to try to skirt it, but they don't like it. And they don't really have to give you a reason. Meta's not like a public, everyone gets a say and you get to sit in front of a jury and plead your case. If they don't like you, they don't like you. And that can be as simple as someone reporting you, saying, hey, this is a cannabis company. We don't want them to live any longer. So in a world where social media rules and Meta ads and social media runs things in tandem, and even in my opinion, higher than your website does, it's been extremely difficult because we're cultured, right? Like, I hear of something or I want to see it, one of the first things I do is I pull up their social media. And 99% of the time I do that before I pull up their website. So when we get shut down with 10, 12,000 followers and have to start over, I think we're at like 450 right now. It doesn't make you look great. So we try to raise awareness if we can that, listen, this isn't a testament of what our business is. This is a platform that we have to play on, but doesn't want us to be there. We ran with no problems for almost 3.5 years. And then we got shut down 3 times in 1 year.
Oh, wow.
We've seen other ones that have made it way longer and then they get shut down and don't come back. We get some that got shut down early and now they've got runway. It's all pretty random. And I think, and I don't know what's happening behind the scenes. I don't know if people know people at Meta. I don't know who complains and how they do it. I don't know if it's competition. If
what enemies have you made?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. What skeletons are coming out now. So I don't know the intricacies of it, but it's tough in a cannabis business to really invest a lot into social media because it's a ticking time bomb.
Yeah. When was the last time you guys got shut down?
Oh, it was like a couple months ago.
I mean, what do you guys even think about? I mean, what even is the point of this if this is just going to keep happening?
I feel so bad for the woman that works for me that runs the social media, because it's like she works so hard to do it, and it's like, I think that's one of the worst parts. It's just so deflating for them as they do so much work. She came in, she built our social media up to be huge, and then it just gets collapsed on her for nothing that's her fault, and as an employer, it's like, hey, just repost all the stuff, do all that. But on the other side of it is something in our previous post got us crushed. So it's kind of brutal.
Right.
It's almost like you look at social media as a loss leader, because you're never going to be able to sell something on social media. Right. That's definitely not allowed. We can't sell online. You're just there to look relevant for the most part.
So what even can you post on social at this point?
Well, if you look at our Instagram now, you see a lot of like adventure type stuff. You see people out in the wild. We do a lot with our merchandise and things along those lines. Similar to trademarking, right? Like you can't trademark a cannabis company. So we had to make lighters.
Really?
Yeah, we had to make lighters and t-shirts.
Why can't you trademark? Why would that not be legal?
Because federally cannabis is illegal. So you have no trademark protection.
Okay.
So we had to trademark lighters that had East Coast on it, merchandise and all these other things. That was kind of our loophole to do it. So that you see, so similar to our social media, we just skirt, like I just did a parody of all the CEOs eating hamburgers on our things, right? And like even part of the joke was I have to go outside and use one of our products. Well, I couldn't even do that on camera because that could shut us down. So it's like, instead we just blew some smoke across the screen so people could get the essence of what I was doing before I came back in to finish the hamburger. So you just have to get really creative, but it's difficult. We sell a product and I can't show that product very clearly a lot, Right. So it's social media is brutal.
Yeah. Well, you guys have been steadily growing despite those roadblocks. So you said it took off pretty immediately when you guys started. Take me into kind of the next phase of the growth of the business.
Yeah. So we built, the Elliott store was the first one. And then we got to work in Lebanon. And Lebanon's almost exactly a half hour from our East Coast store. It is the first property in 202 in Lebanon, and that borders Rochester. So similar to what we learned in Elliott is Maine is population wise, it's really small. Geographically, it's absolutely massive. So what that means is we need to find the pockets that work. And back to kind of the business model is New Hampshire has seemingly no interest in accepting cannabis as something for their tax revenue. So we'll take money from your people, right? We'll be able to service the people of New Hampshire. So we wanted to stand up stores on the border because, what's a better population to sell to than someone that doesn't have access to it? So so the Lebanon store did great. It was right on par with Elliott. That's a great border store. And then a year and a half after that, which would have been closing the end of 2023, we opened one up in Waterville. Waterville, Maine's about hour and 45 minutes, 2 hours north, just outside of Augusta. That's an old Burger King. And it very much still looks like a Burger King. We changed the colors and did what we could to make it look like a cannabis store. The appealing part to that location was, some of those Burger Kings that had massive signs that hang over the highway. It had one of those. So that's why we grabbed it. But in the bottom of the 9th, the state and DOT pivoted and said, you can't use it. So we ended up having to hack that thing down 40 feet. So it's still a large sign. You can still see it from the highway. But again, these are things that normally when I was early in this business would really spin me up and enrage me. And now it's like, you just get used to taking it. That's unfortunate. That's the unfortunate side of cannabis is no one wants your signs. No one wants your billboards. No one wants any of it. So you're just constantly fighting for it. Yeah. And we lost that one.
Yeah. You learn how to be very adaptable.
Yep.
And now East Coast Cannabis is crushing it.
Yeah, now we're having fun.
Yeah.
So, and we're still trying to grow. I think at this point we're just trying to be a lot more strategic about it.
Okay.
When it's brand new, it's a blank slate. But now the world's compressing, right? And similar to what I'm saying in Elliott, why like none of these stores are going to exist. And I'm always blown away that these operators come into mature markets and think that they're just going to extract market share. On the other side of that coin, who am I to think I can go open up a store in Portland, Maine, where there's 60 of them and we're going to make the big splash, right? So it's like, yes, we have confidence in our wheel. I think we do it as well as anyone, but we also need to be really smart in how and why we do it.
Okay.
So not all of the towns have opted in yet. There's still a lot of border towns up the western side of Maine, from like the White Mountains of New Hampshire that haven't opted in. So those are places I'm looking to target, kind of trying to stay with the New Hampshire model because they're still pretty behind the wheel on getting cannabis going. So we're looking to expand and grow, but do it strategically. Maybe via merger and acquisition. I think similar to the stock market, when things are really tough and some businesses aren't doing well, sometimes it's easier and cheaper just to buy someone out that's struggling.
So when you were originally lobbying, you were talking about all of the tax revenue that this can bring the state of Maine. Do you have any data or any points to bring up just to show just how right you were and how much money this is making?
I think between medical and rec, it was, I want to say Maine it was something like, 400 million or something like that between both markets annually. So somewhere around that number. Yeah. It's a large number. There's for a small market.
That sounds worth it, New Hampshire.
Yeah. You would think so. You would think so.
Coming up, why New Hampshire is hesitant to legalize recreational cannabis, and Dana even makes some cannabis recommendations for me. That's next, but we are entering a very picturesque time of year for the Seacoast, and one person who is very good at capturing these beautiful moments is my dear friend and fellow type 1 diabetic, Andrea Schwanbeck. If you know me, you know I will volunteer to be in front of a camera at the drop of a hat. But I also know a lot of you aren't like that. And when you hear family photo session, you immediately feel the same dread as realizing that you've forgotten your ID while standing in line to enter D Street Tavern. What a nightmare. I couldn't imagine it. Here's the good news though, it doesn't have to feel that way for you. That's because we have Andrea and her business, Tacks Photography, right here on the Seacoast. Her whole approach is built around real life. Relaxed, playful, zero pressure for perfect behavior. Because honestly, the chaos is where the magic is. That's where the real smiles live. The kid who won't sit down, the dog who photobombs, the windblown hair over by Prescott Park, that's the stuff you'll actually want to remember. Tacks has been capturing Seacoast families since 2010. They offer everything from quick, seasonal, 30-minute mini sessions to fully customized family portraits to extended generational shoots where every branch of the family gets their own little moment, plus the big group shot for the holiday card. With Mother's Day coming up, this is a gift that actually lasts. For your mom, your grandma, your wife, not the flowers, not a candle. This is something that ends up on the shelf, on the wall, on the fridge for the next decade. And if you're picturing the stress of getting everyone dressed and out the door like you're trying to snag a last-minute Saturday reservation at the Black Trumpet, relax. Tacks keeps it light, easy, and genuinely fun, so you can just show up as yourselves. If this floats your boat, you can book your session now by visiting the sponsored section of the show notes. Summer on the Seacoast feels like it's right around the corner. The windows are cracking open, that clean New Hampshire air is coming through, the lighting is perfect. But you also might make eye contact with someone walking by your house when you're having your peaceful morning coffee. And then suddenly your morning feels less coastal New England charm and more like you're living on that live stream that is always showing what's happening in Market Square, which isn't that kind of weird that we do that? I feel like we need to talk about that more. Anyways, we love the light around here. We just don't need an audience while we're enjoying it. That's where Budget Blinds of the Seacoast comes in. They're local, they come straight to your home, and they help you figure out exactly what works for your space so that you're not wandering the aisles of Home Depot for 2 hours pretending you know what you're doing, which guilty as charged. Whether you're in a modern Portsmouth apartment, a Dover colonial, or a Maine coastal spot where the sun somehow finds every window at all hours of the day, Budget Blinds helps you control the light, the privacy, and the feel of your home. Custom blinds, shades, and shutters, professionally installed, reasonably priced, and done right the first time. For more info, just visit our sponsored section of the show notes. All right, so what's the problem here? Why isn't New Hampshire, they're not even close to making this legal?
We tried. So a couple years ago, I went and spoke in Concord, and I was like, listen, I went to high school here. The only reason I'm in another jurisdiction is because you guys wouldn't allow us to do it. I'd like to bring revenue to this state. It's not a secret that alcohol sales pay for everything in the state, and alcohol sales are slipping fast. So, I know Kelly Yade, I believe she was previously a district attorney, or an AG, sorry. And so I think she saw the worst side of substances like this. So again, I can understand she's been exposed to the worst of it. But from an economic stance, I would really urge her to look at the data from other states, things she's concerned about in drug usage. Hard drug use is down in all the states that cannabis get legalized in. Tax revenues up. So I think it would be an awesome backfill for New Hampshire to cover the fiscal note that alcohol is causing. Why it hasn't come, I'm not sure. I mean, Sununu was always an objection. And I mean, if I remember correctly, I think he was like within weeks of being out of office, and he kind of turned around and was like, oh, this isn't so bad, you know, and probably just to save face. So, I mean, who knows who the lobbyists are? Who knows what they're being told? Who knows what the constituents are? But I have a really tough time looking and finding reasons that validate this from a political or economic stance that say it's bad. And I urge them, like, please, like, I'm happy to sit down and talk to you about this, but like, show me what is slowing you down. What is the barrier here? You know, come dig through my facilities. I'll show you whatever you want to see. It's like, we want to see this work, and I would love to be able to play in my home state. But so far that hasn't been very successful.
So the hesitation in New Hampshire is mostly due to this is drug dealing, this is criminal activity, that old way of thinking.
Yeah, I don't know if they're that hard on it. You know, I'm not really too sure what the actual sticking point is. It seems, at least from the research I've done, it's no without a reason. I know New Hampshire wants to be involved, like similar to the alcohol model, right? Like New Hampshire, you can get alcohol a lot cheaper in our liquor stores than you can in almost any other state.
Right.
And New Hampshire gets a big piece of that pie. So I know they want to replicate that.
Yeah.
It's tough because if you're going to sell a federally illegal substance in a state-run store with state employees, I'd assume there's probably some friction with the feds there. So that could be a problem. So what we proposed was, let's make it more of like a franchise model. Whereas I can open a store, it's franchised. So instead of a tax, maybe whatever the synonymous number would be, 10, 15, 20% would go back to the state to support you in marketing as a franchisee would, or franchisor would, but let us operate independently. That way they could still get their piece of the pie without technically being involved in ownership, which hopefully would dilute the conflict of interest of the federal illegality. But they didn't really bite at that either. So yeah, it's been a frustrating path to try to get it along the finish line. And listen, from my side of things, I'm fine if they don't come online. You know, we've set up our business forever. When I lived in New Hampshire, you know, it's like people would come here and not support the economies of their other states, and
right,
not because they had sales tax. And now is New Hampshire's chance to kind of get them back, you know?
But I would just imagine New Hampshire being such a prideful people. The fact that we are driving business to Maine, to Massachusetts, that they wouldn't be like, no, we want to keep New Hampshire people here to buy stuff in New Hampshire.
Yeah, you'd think so. Yeah. And especially the runways they have. You know, I mean, I haven't validated this, but I was told the Circle liquor store, the one here in Portsmouth, is the highest grossing liquor store like this side of the Mississippi.
Really?
You know? Yeah. So It's like, if you've got that foot traffic, I mean, there's 1 million cars a day that go up 95.
Yeah.
Maybe you'd want to sell cannabis there. I would think so, you know, and I think your constituents would probably want it. There's a lot of tax revenue to be had there, but they won't go for it. And unfortunately, now they've waited too long. Yeah. Because here's what happens in every state, right? It's brand new. There's not a massive supply chain to keep up with demand. So because of that, prices are high. Eights are high. Everything's high. But because of that, revenue's high. And therefore, tax return to the state is great. The problem in New Hampshire is it's a small state. So they can't enter at the high point and have that runway that every other state has. For example, when Maine came online, if New Hampshire was legal, people aren't going to drive an hour and a half down to New Hampshire to get cheaper cannabis. New Hampshire's so small, people will drive 20 minutes over the border. So now they're going to have to enter and play at the compressed levels that we're playing in. The Massachusetts market right now is brutal. It's a dogfight down there. Cannabis is so cheap. They're going to have to play at those price points. So now they're really up against the wall because they don't have that grace period, that runway where prices are huge. There's no competition. They let the other states around them get mature, and now they need to play at that maturity price point. And that's going to be, unfortunately, a rude awakening for New Hampshire. So they're going to have to do it really well. And it's not appealing as an operator or an investor, right? An investor goes into a state, I'll invest in you because you've got 3 or 4 years of huge, great prices before the supply chain catches up. You don't have that ability in New Hampshire.
Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most, how confident are you that in the next decade, New Hampshire legalizes recreational cannabis?
I mean, I don't know a ton about politicking, but I can't see a way that they could hold off another decade. Because the trends are there. Alcohol sales are sliding fast nationwide. Yeah. You know, that's just something the younger generation's a lot smarter than we were. You know, I went up to Plymouth State for homecoming with a couple of my buddies that didn't go there this last year. We'd played golf. It was Friday night. Homecoming weekend technically started on Saturday. We went to the bar for a couple hours. We're walking back to our hotel at like 10 o'clock at night. I took them through a tour through campus. There wasn't one party. Not one. which is so different than the school I went to.
Right.
We passed one student. He's like, yeah, it's just not really like that anymore. Culture's changing. California sober is the new thing.
Yeah.
They don't drink, but they use cannabis. A lot of people are using psilocybin products, but alcohol is starting to slide. So back to the New Hampshire thing, we really hang our hat on that down here, and it makes a lot of money. We got to find a way to backfill it because fiscal notes aren't popular. You know?
It's interesting. I've had this conversation a little bit with some brewery owners on the show in the past, and this often comes up that the younger generation is pushing the NA movement, and it's often cited, and I've seen this online as well, often cited that the younger generation is just far more health conscious. They want to feel better in their bodies. They don't want to deal with hangovers. But I also think it's that the younger generation is also just lonelier, and they're just hanging out less, and so they're not having parties where alcohol is a thing as well.
I think culturally, to your point earlier about COVID and what things happen to it, I can't imagine being in high school or college through those years. Right. Those are the social foundation blocks. Yeah. And maybe from a health stance, one of the nice upsides for them is it didn't push them into peer pressure of drinking for whether it's peers or upperclassmen. But I think the downside to your point is that there was a huge social impact. Yeah. And this could be the product of that.
And also on top of that, I mean, you said that you were in Deerfield having your tent parties and you're smoking in 8th grade or whatever. Also, kids are just so heavily tracked on their iPhones now. I don't know. Can kids even sneak out anymore? Can they even?
That's a good point.
Can they get into hood rat shit with their friends anymore? Can you go to a party at 15 years old where there's alcohol without getting caught? I don't know if that's even possible anymore.
Yeah, not to mention the tracking, but even everyone's got a camera now.
Yeah. That as well.
So it's like, I think of the parties that used to get busted when I was in high school, they're few and far between. Like someone had to physically catch you.
Yeah.
Now it's like you handle the wrong thing and there's a beer can in the background. Like who knows what happens. So
right.
I think these are all
contributing factors to it. So what's your number next decade? 1 to 10. How confident are you that happens?
I think I'm almost 100% confident it'll get legalized.
Okay.
Whether that happens in time for stores and infrastructure to be going, as we know, it takes that 4 to 5 year runway. That I'd say 50-50, it's tough to tell. I'm not too close to the political landscape of New Hampshire. I have heard that Kelly Ayotte would want to run again. And again, if I'm her, the tax benefits of this would be a really strong campaign token. So hopefully. But
you'll just keep doing your business in Maine for now. I should have asked you this earlier, but I'll ask you now. I'm walking into East Coast Cannabis. We'll stick with the Seacoast, the Elliott location. I walk into ECC Elliott. What am I walking into? What is my experience?
So that particular store we built because we thought New Hampshire was going to come on a lot earlier than it did. And we built that to be an attraction. So big vaulted ceilings, really nice architecture, massive glass gable end coming in. It's really supposed to be a wowing building when you come up to it. And I believe it is. We're actually putting the finishing touches right now, where when you walk in the front door, the first thing you look into is a grow room. And then right next to it there's a small little commercial kitchen. And the goal there was, and this has just come from feedback and even from what you see again in mirroring the microbrew and beer industries. I mean, this would never fly today, but I remember in middle school, we used to take tours to the Budweiser plants. Like that's wild to me.
In middle school, really? That's funny.
And, but similarly, it's like everyone, because of the regulation, no one gets to see behind the veil. I can't take people on tours. Due to the social media restrictions, it's really hard to show what goes on back there. So because of this, you're coming in, you're buying this nice product, whether it's a gummy or a vape or just a bag of flour, which is what we call the buds. You have no idea how it happens and where it came from. So the focal point for that store was, let's create an experience. Let's make it so they can have the brewery tour. They can see behind the veil, see the real people working, see the systems. Like one of the most impressive things in cannabis, in my opinion, and I see this like when I bring my family or friends or anyone through our big cultivation buildings, they're always so wowed by all of the automation, the equipment. I mean, you just have massive compressors and huge air conditioners and all these dehumidifiers, and the lighting is so impressive, and the irrigation controls. And it's all very scientific, and no one knows that. And they're wowed by it. They just picture Cheech and Chong out in the field walking around clipping buds. And it's so much more advanced to that. So we're really pushing hard to be able to let the consumer see this is how these products come to life. That's how it starts. This is how it gets to what you're now consuming. So a long-winded answer, what your question is, that particular facility was not designed. So one, if it becomes a concentrated area like it's starting is becoming to be, why are they going to come to us? because we can give you an experience more than a shopping experience. And then 2, if New Hampshire comes online, good luck trying to compete with this New Hampshire. Yeah. So.
All right. So I walk in and I'm getting an experience. If using me as an example, I know nothing, but I say, I want to start using something.
Yep.
And so I say this to one of your staff members, then what's the conversation we're having?
Yeah. So they're just going to start saying, hey, what are you trying to accomplish? It's generally where they start. Like, where are you trying to go with this?
I would like to be more focused.
I'd like to be more focused, right? What does that mean? Is that during the day? Are you having a tough time at dinner?
I just want to, when I'm sitting down to work, I just want to be distraction free. I just want to really get to that next level of where like I can really get in touch with myself to produce the best creative results.
All right. So if you're looking to do something while you're working, you don't really want to have too much of a psychoactive or intoxicating experience. Have you considered microdosing? And I think they take you down a journey of here's the products that have low doses and you can slowly ramp yourself up, and I think globally, and these are some of my favorite stories, but a lot of times you talked about people, what you do, the first thing you hear is the time they took way too much or their friend made a brownie that knocked them on their ass, So I hate that, and like we love talking about, it's fun to joke, but that does deter so many people because it's such a bad experience.
Yeah.
So the way I like to start is start small, THC, and there's hundreds of other cannabinoids, but they have a lot of benefits before you feel high. And I think understanding that you can get those without having to get to the intoxicating level is really important for people to know. And then just take baby steps. The amount of times I hear this too. I took a gummy, didn't feel anything, took another one in 10 minutes. It's like, well, you got to digest that. And now you're going to digest 2. Right. So give it an hour. Even if Google says it's going to take 40 minutes, give it an hour and 20. There's nothing wrong with taking your time. It's really tough to undo it. So staff is really just going to push you to take baby steps.
Yeah. Okay. And not try to upsell you.
No. Because here's the deal. If you have a good experience, you'll come back.
Yeah.
If we upsell you, maybe we sell you another $20 or $30 of something and you take too much, you don't have a good time, or you felt like you were oversold and now you want to go try another place or whatever it is. It's just nothing good comes out of that.
Yeah.
There's no benefit of having one single transaction be inflated, so you lose the other ones. We want you to come back. We want you to be here. We want your trust, and if any of that stuff happens, we've depleted your trust.
Yeah. Why are people coming in? I mean, when it was medicinal, it was very clear. I want to feel better. Recreational, the why, is it different?
That's the $1 million question. And we do surveys. We do everything we can to try to engage people to truly figure out what's driving them in. Because that is the one touch that we've started to lose. Medically, there's data. I use it because of X, and we can gather that data and make sure products are tailored to fit better. Now we're relying on feedback and sales trends. So people tell you without telling you, right? It's like these SKUs sell like crazy. These ones don't. So we can figure out what they're using. It's the correlation of why and when and where that we need to try to piece together ourselves. So we do a lot with engagement. We try to do a lot of giveaways and things along those lines, incentives. I think we just did a survey like 2 months ago where it was, I want to say you get $50 off, just blanket, if you just take the survey, because that data is so important. Why are you using this? I can tell you from a lot of that data, sleep aid it's one of the top ones.
Yeah.
And even in most of our digestible products, those are the top ones we sell. People want to sleep better. But the tough thing with sleeping better is they've been misled or they've taken too much. Now they wake up high or they wake up groggy, right? So how little can I take where I can sleep, but I don't wake up feeling weird?
Yeah. I imagine dosage is very individualized. There's not a blanket advice you can give.
It is. It's tough because it's so metabolism based depending on the product. How hydrated are you? When was your last meal? What was your last meal? How much sleep did you get last night? All those things are going to implicate your metabolism. Or do you just have a fast metabolism? Like you're a yogi, you're probably sneaking off in Fight Club, you're probably burning a fast metabolism. Yeah. So maybe you're going to go through a fast, right? Where the next person, something's going to hit them a lot slower. So it really takes, people need to be willing to tinker, but that just goes back to tinker small. None of those variables are a problem if you start small. They're only a problem if you try to be a hero.
Payroll company to biologist.
I don't know if I go that far.
What a trip for you.
It's been a journey. You think back at things that, there was times at payroll I absolutely hated it. I love the people I work with, and it's like, man, I'd never do that again. But if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be here. So it was part of the key to the puzzle.
A decade into the cannabis business, Arcana to East Coast, to 3 locations, and to whatever is going to come next. What is still really driving you?
I want to keep, I guess from a global stance, I want to diversify in the sense, just because cannabis is still federally illegal it just makes it really difficult, even down to me trying to get, like I want to get a mortgage. They dig through everything forever because where my income comes from. So, what's next is, I've launched a beverage company with 2 other friends. I tend to work in trios.
Yep.
So that's been kind of the new project and endeavor, which has been a ton of fun. It's called Sunday, with Matt Marr and Andy Hart. And that's been a really great learning experience for me. It doesn't have the guardrails that ECC does. So that's been a really fun venture.
It is a THC product, right?
It is.
Yeah.
And this is stemming from, so it's a CBD derived THC. So quick synopsis here is back in 2018, CBD farmers were losing their shirt. It wasn't a very popular thing. Now the THC had taken off, and they successfully lobbied to the feds and said, all right, this isn't intoxicating. Let it be legal. The Fed said, you know what? You're right. You're free. Go off to the races. Fast forward, chemists figured out that if you alter CBD, which they do in a safe, clean way, you create Delta 9. Delta 9 is the active ingredient in THC. So now through a federal loophole, they have made Delta 9, i.e. THC, legal without all of the barriers that I play in East Coast cannabis. So that's why you see a lot of these drinks online. You start to see them emerging in stores. You're even seeing them in gummies and flower products. So it is a THC parallel product, but it's very different in how it gets there and how it's regulated. And for me, it's simply just exciting because I've operated in an industry where we pretty much market like it's 40 years ago. We can't do meta.
Right.
We can't do billboards. We can't do anything. It's all word of mouth and posters, and now I can finally work in a business that can use modern technology and modern vehicles of advancing the business.
Again, that's Dana Brearley of East Coast Cannabis in Elliott, Lebanon, and Waterville, Maine. To learn more about their offerings, you can visit their website, eccannabis.com, or follow their Instagram, East Coast Official 207. At least for now, until they get shut down again. Thank you, Dana, for joining, to Budget Blinds, Studioh, and Brass Tacks Photography for supporting this episode, and to all of you for listening. I'd love to see some of you all in person soon. We are bringing Seacoast Stories Dinner Club to Exeter on May 6th, and I'm proud to announce that on May 20th, Dinner Club will take over the West End of Portsmouth. Not downtown, just the West End. Restaurants are limited, so seats at dinner will be limited. So if you want in, now is the time to strike. Book your seat by visiting the dinner link in the events section of the show notes. I'll be back next week with another conversation featuring a big Seacoast name. But until then, if you see me around town this week, please stop me and say hi. A bunch of you did this last week, and it means so much to me. So please keep it up. I'll talk to you soon. But until then, live free or die.